Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Ashley. I'm the town's environmental planner. And today I'll mainly be talking to you about our second climate action workshop, which is March 7th. But prior to then, I'm going to tell you a bit about our progress thus far. So let's jump right in. In December 2022, Brunswick became the 6th town in Maine to engage in the climate action planning process, after we received a grant to create a climate action plan that will allow us to focus on the individual needs of our community. And there are 3 main groups facilitating this climate action plan: our resident volunteer committee that will convene until the plan is completed. In addition to that, they are collaborating with town staff, myself and other department heads, as well as community stakeholders to bring in as many voices to this effort as possible. The plan itself will be a framework for the town to take action, reduce emissions, and essentially prepare for the impacts of climate change. And with this effort, we are supporting other community values and goals as we strive to protect economic development and create a healthy and more sustainable Brunswick. So what goes into making this plan? It has 3 main components: a GHG inventory, or greenhouse gas inventory. So it helps us to determine where our highest sources of emissions and polluters are. A vulnerability assessment, so where are we most vulnerable to climate impacts, and a whole lot of municipal and community-based engagement in the form of surveys and workshops. We began by completing these 2 technical analyses to see what information we could collect thus far, and with those 2 baselines completed, we have moved into the phase of action development. This is where we'll develop and refine the actions that we can take to meet our goals, and that's essentially the opportunity I'll be touching on slightly later in this presentation. So through these models and calculations within the greenhouse gas inventory, the town of Brunswick total emissions were estimated at almost 241,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. And when you break it down, the inventory itself mainly focused on transportation concerning passenger and commercial vehicles, waste related to sewage, garbage, and recycling, as well as energy usage in residential and commercial buildings. At least from a community perspective, this was also done solely for municipal emissions as well. So focusing on strictly the community emissions, 56% of your emissions come from your stationary energy, so those being mainly commercial and residential building and housing energy usage, but you also have a large source from passenger vehicles as well. The other major component of the plan, as I mentioned, is the vulnerability assessment. So while climate hazards are the actual impact on the group of people, places, and ecosystems around town, the vulnerability refers to the way our town is negatively affected by climate change. And we all experience different levels of vulnerability in conjunction with those impacts because we don't experience life equally. Your existing vulnerabilities are going to impact how you feel the effects of climate change. So this vulnerability assessment helped us to understand where our vulnerability lies as a community, and it's very important because it tells us where to put our resources towards and how to respond. And I'm not going to read all of these verbatim. I hope they're large enough for you to see. But these examples include elderly populations vulnerable to temperature extremes, many of which live alone, a cost-burdened population that's heavily reliant on fossil fuels and its volatile pricing, flooding of roads and coastal housing, which we've all gotten our fill of this past few months, I would say, and increasing storm runoff threatening marine resources, to name a few. And please note that most of the vulnerabilities, again, are unequal and hit a lot of citizens much harder than others. So following these 2 analyses, the next step in the process was setting an emissions reduction target, which we did on December 4th. When setting an emissions reduction target, we're essentially asking people to choose how aggressively they wanted to aim to reduce the town's emissions. The goals, I want to reiterate, are non-binding, mainly aspirational, working towards a benchmark, and they're framed to help us prioritize future actions for mitigation. So the recommendation that our Climate Action Task Force put forth was 65% reduction in emissions by 2030, net zero for municipal operations by 2040, and then net zero community-wide by 2050. In prior presentations, I included information concerning all the community input we gathered to get there, and I would be happy to send that to you if you would like to follow up after the fact, but to keep this presentation concise and get you home at a reasonable hour, I didn't want to overload you. So, we use this information from these 2 technical assessments in addition to community input to shape a roadmap for meeting our goals and fulfilling community priorities. And that is what leads us to the point of workshop number 2, where we will be asking you to express your preferences for actions and strategies that could be included in this plan to meet those goals. In case anyone doesn't know, our workshop is March 7th from 6 to 8 p.m., doors at 5:30 at the Coffin School Gymnasium, which is on 20 Barrow Street in Brunswick. Please attend. So, what can you expect at this workshop? First, we'll be asking you to help us prioritize potential actions and strategies, and as well as providing suggestions for how we could improve or implement these possible actions and strategies here in town. Also, there will be snacks. Very important. The plan itself, in content and actions alike, is centered around 6 main elements, or sectors as we like to call them. Those being transportation, both active and public. Active obviously being related to biking and pedestrian infrastructure. Public being trains, buses, things like that. Natural resource management, waste management, energy and renewables, buildings and housing, and public health and resilience. These are all often interconnected, and action in one area could likely support goals in another. For example, enabling active lifestyles serves to also enhance public health, but could also reduce emissions from transportation, as people walking and biking where they need to go hits both targets. So at this point in our analysis, with the baseline we have, we understand that some of what our future looks like if we reach those goals. So the point of the workshop is to next determine how we're going to get there. Up on the screen is just a few examples under or related to each sector. And again, I'm not going to bore you by reading each word for word, but I will emphasize that the draft list we present at the workshop will certainly be more extensive than what you see here. So that's a little teaser to get you to attend if you want to see all of them. I also do want to take a moment to reassure everyone that what you see here is draft language only. No final decisions have yet to be made concerning what will or will not be included in this plan, but this workshop is your opportunity to have a hand in what that future will look like. So, why your attendance and participation is so important. I want to take a moment to mention that while this is a planning effort that the town is undertaking, meeting our climate goals will take action across the community. It will be really valuable for residents and businesses to take action, but also continue to engage with the town so that we can drive these solutions together. Residents, municipal and school staff, elected officials, businesses, nonprofit organizations, and town committees all have roles to play in this climate action planning process. So, it's true that the topic isn't always the most cheerful, but again, it's important to remember how important your own involvement is in this process, and if we don't get that input, the plan won't fit the community the way it should and the way we need it to. So, please feel free to join us that day and let us understand what your community perspective is, as it is inherently valuable to identifying what themes, actions, and strategies that this plan should or should not include and prioritize. And I finished a lot quicker than I thought, even though I tried to study myself. With that, I thank you for listening, and will happily take any questions from the extensive audience here. Yeah.
How many people were at the first workshop?
How many people?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly, but I know we got over 100, which was pretty amazing. And I know that some of them, they told me this verbatim, only attended because we had food from Wild Oats, and I would like everyone to know here and at home, we will be ordering from Wild Oats again. So come, it's free, everything's complimentary. We've got a little raffle going on as well. It's gonna be a really fun time. Any other questions?
You estimate a couple hours?
I'm sorry?
A couple hours? you mentioned?
Yeah, so it's quite structured. We'll start with, so doors at 5:30. That's when folks can kind of take their time to peruse the refreshments table, look at all the other lovely businesses or organizations that will be tabling. So I know we've got an example. We have Peggy from Sustainable Practice. She will be tabling as well as giving you a brief presentation, but we'll also have other organizations like our local Conservation Commission, who will be sharing information related to a pesticide ordinance update that we're pursuing in the shoreland sensitive coastal area. Bike and Pedestrian Committee, Trout Unlimited, the Mary Meeting Bay chapter, and then one other, I can't remember, but about 5 or so. But yeah, it'll start with a maybe 20 or so minute presentation, and then each of those sectors that I described will essentially have their own table with posters that will help to facilitate the activities I described. So you had a question?
Yes, it's a lot of information.
And I cut it down.
One of the things on one of the slides referred to 10% of conservation land, I think it said. What, can you explain that? What that means?
So I believe what you were referring to was when I had a slide up concerning our vulnerability assessment. So part of what we looked at was how much land do we have conserved in Brunswick. And I believe they based that 10% amount on land that is not developed. So for example, I believe a lot of that refers to, and I don't remember the exact acreage, so please forgive me, but it's a lot of town-owned open space, conservation easements we have. I know in easements alone, we've got almost 1,000 acres. I think in total, I want to say that the 10% refers to about 3,000 acres conserved. And Maine's Climate Action Plan, Maine Won't Wait, recommends that towns aim to conserve at least 30%. So that's why it was listed as a vulnerability, because one of the strategies for reducing emissions is essentially using and conserving forests as carbon sinks. So that's why they emphasize that as a really important part of the plan.
So what's the state goal and the national goal is 30% by 2030. I'm not sure what the percentage of Brunswick is now. You're saying conserve land.
So the current percentage we have conserved is about 10%, but what we could explore as an action or strategy is, possibly aiming to conserve at least 30%. And someone who shows up to the workshop could very well say, I don't think that goes far enough. We should conserve 50. Or someone who disagrees could come along and say, I don't think we should conserve any. So the workshop is really whether or not you agree with what's proposed. Everyone is welcome, and we want everyone's feedback, whether they like what we're proposing or not.
So I'm on the Town Commons Committee, among other committees, and one of the will the Town Commons Committee be tabling at the workshop? That's one of our most important open spaces in town.
I haven't had anyone from that committee contact me, but I can evaluate how much space we have left, and if there's something that you would like to table about, you and I can definitely follow up and discuss more tomorrow. I'd be happy to chat more with you.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, sure.
Will there be specific numerical goals set in the final plan?
Oh, for sure, yeah. So this workshop is mainly to just get public input on slightly higher level actions and strategies, but once the town understands a bit of perspective concerning what the community wants, that's the point at which we'll start to, discuss and hash out specifics, because it would be pointless to do that at this point without first understanding what our greater community even wants. So that's why it's saved for after the fact. And also, it's best not to necessarily get bogged down in details this early on in the process, but that will be part of it coming up.
When's the final plan going to be?
Not soon enough. So the whole timeline itself is initially suggested for about a year or so, and we are already past that mark. We started in December of 2022, and we're anticipated to finish in 2023. But because we have a very passionate committee that wanted to do more outreach and just simply concerning the way holidays fell and different storms that occurred, the processes get shifted, but that's okay. Falmouth, for example, took 2 years. I'm really hoping it doesn't take that long, but it's okay if it does, because it's not going to come at any extra added cost. GPCOG, which is the consultant group that is helping us to facilitate this process, their work plan stays the same. It just means that we're taking slightly longer to work through this process, and that's okay. Yeah.
This might be better for next meeting. But, I mentioned something about incentives for like renewables and stuff. I was wondering, are there any ideas in place? I imagine you probably do, that you could share about what those incentives might be.
So let me see if I can go back. There it is. So what I presented here, the way the plan goes is that there's each sector that is basically like the main theme. That sector then has a few goals that help to kind of drive the strategies, and then each strategy has specific actions. So what you're seeing up here on the screen is only the strategies, and those are generally going to be a little bit more high level. So for example, the strategy concerning natural resources, where it says protect forest, wetland, and coastal habitat, a more specific action under that would be aim to conserve 30% of forested land by 2023 or 2030 or 2040, whatever we decide that goal is. So yes, they will be more specific, and there will be examples of that at the workshop as well. I didn't want to fit all of that on one slide because it would be a bit overwhelming, but we will be aiming for specific.
It's great. It's great for everyone.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah.
Homework?
Homework?
Yeah, you have homework for us?
Do I have homework for you? Take one of these pieces of paper, tell your friends, actually you can take many pieces of paper if you want, hand them out to your friends, encourage your neighbors to attend, really just any help we can get in spreading the word. We've done a lot to, and we'll continue to promote it as much as possible, but any additional support is welcome. That's the best homework I could assign if possible. Yeah.
But as a concerned citizen, I feel I need to be a bit more informed than I am before coming to a workshop like this. Is there anything that you can recommend that is doable between now and then?
Like as far as keeping yourself more informed, I would say that, so if you head to www.brunswickclimateaction.org, I would suggest familiarizing yourself with that website. It's our climate action planning website, and it details everything we've done thus far, and especially the tab concerning workshops or how to get involved. It tells you about how the previous workshop went, and actually that workshop's interactive portal is still open and available online. So if you weren't able to attend our first workshop, which was kind of mostly related to community goal setting, just understanding what direction people wanted us to take. That was also when we gathered a lot of information about what emissions reduction targets to take. But that portal is open until our second workshop on the 7th, after which we'll then put the second workshop up and available. So it's just a way to continue getting information from people who weren't necessarily able to attend in person. So I would say if you want to, if you are a glutton for homework, that would be another really great thing that you could do to feel like you're caught up and better informed. But otherwise, you can always email me with questions and I can give you other reading to do.
What's that website again?
www.brunswickclimateaction.org. Jim?
Might add that there is a video on demand of the first workshop.
Oh, yes.
We watched it.
Yep, and it is also linked on our website, yeah. So if you're a little confused by the interactive workshop portal that is on that website, you can watch the video. Our lovely Jim Nealon from our TV3 group was there, and he recorded the entire workshop, and as well as the presentation, and that gives you a really great breakdown concerning what the point of that workshop was, how to kind of go through the activities, things like that. But feel free to reach out if you ever have more questions or want more homework. Yeah.
Is there anywhere on that website a compiled list of resources or literature to learn more about individual targets, I guess?
Not yet, but that is actually one of the actions that's proposed under, I think it's public health and resilience, but increasing the amount of educational resources and making that more widely available and publicized is something that we're aiming to do, because we certainly have a lot of information and great resources at hand, but nothing that's really collected in one central location. Yeah.
More questions keep coming to mind.
That's perfect.
Bowdoin College is a really important part of this community, both in terms of being a landowner, solar energy project, teaching environmental courses, et cetera.
Mhm.
How are they fitting into this process?
I am reaching out to the folks at Bowdoin. Actually, we have a Bowdoin professor on our Climate Action Task Force, Mark Battle. He is a professor of chemistry and astronomy, I believe. But so we do have Bowdoin involvement, and I am in regular contact with their sustainability office. Once I evaluate the amount of table space, Bowdoin's sustainability office was also one more organization I was considering reaching out to invite to table. So it's just a matter of making sure we have the capacity to do it. But I am also going to be tabling at, I think there's some kind of outdoor fair coming up in April that, our task force regularly tables at any chance we get. So we do try and stay connected, but if you have suggestions for additional ways we can do that, I'm all ears.
Another question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Brunswick is a hub for all kinds of activities for the surrounding communities. Is that being factored in here so that Brunswick isn't going to solve the climate crisis on our own? To say the least.
You mean like working with communities to address these issues?
Exactly.
Yeah, so one example of that, so the community action grant that we received that is funding this process, creating a climate action plan was just one of the many things that you could do with that grant money, and you can actually, so we received $50,000 as a single community, but you can actually get up to $150,000 if you're pairing with another neighboring community. So once we have our, direction and this plan is finalized, there will be endless opportunities to reach out to the surrounding communities and make sure we cooperatively plan different projects or studies that align with what they're doing as well. And we're very fortunate that, we've got our neighbors just south of us on the highway, Freeport. They just had their second climate action workshop early December, so they're a bit ahead of us on that curve. I know Yarmouth, our immediate neighbor, is also pursuing a grant for a climate action plan. So we will have neighboring communities that we will likely have aligned goals and such.
What about Thompson, Durham, Harpswell? Are they doing anything?
Yep. Topsom, I believe is what I meant to say. Yarmouth already finished their climate action plan, but Topsom is the community that is newly pursuing a climate action plan. I misspoke. You had a question? Yeah, did you raise your hand?
Sort of, yes. So I was also wondering about, is this all reinventing the wheel, or you seem to be knowing a little bit about what Freeport's doing, but other than that, are you able to build on what they're doing at all? or with that, because they all have their own action plans, or they're developing them, how much coordination is there? How much,
Well, I mean, so to your point, we're not necessarily looking at one community and saying, hey, let's do exactly what they're doing. And I don't think that's what you're suggesting, but each community is, of course, as we all understand, different in its own right. So there won't necessarily be complete overlap with goals and strategies that we pursue or include in the plan, but there will certainly be opportunities and enough overlap that we can collaborate on projects where it's applicable. I don't know if that answers your question, though.
at this point, we're kind of working in our own little bubble?
Right, yeah, we don't know what to pursue or collaborate on until we have that plan finalized. I mean, there are some things that we're already necessarily pursuing that will end up in the plan anyway. So for example, as I mentioned, our Conservation Commission, which I staff, we're working on and hopefully going to update our pesticide ordinance in sensitive coastal areas to protect our water quality and natural resources. So neighboring towns, obviously, if we share borders, water doesn't stay within one specific location, it moves. So collaborating with our coastal community neighbors, or for example, Topsom, who we share the Androscoggin with, if we're, and this is way into the future, and I'm just using this as an example. I don't want anyone to think that we're pursuing a townwide ordinance for pesticides yet. But, if, for example, we wanted to update the water or improve the water quality in the Androscoggin, if we were being really aggressive, it wouldn't be pointless, but, if Topsom is doing nothing, which I'm not saying they are, if Topsom was doing nothing, it would in theory be pointless because that runoff would still happen. So coordinating on activities like that where possible is something that we could certainly pursue, but until we understand what other communities want and can identify where that overlap exists, we can't really pursue it yet.
I just want to comment, that's a really good question.
For sure.
Portland and South Portland are collaborating. And I've gone to the Freeport Climate Action Task Force meetings, and I was actually surprised at how unique the problems are between Brunswick and Freeport, and how they really do have things that they need to work on that are specific to Freeport. It's a really good question about non-reinventing the wheel and so on.
Yeah, and it's good that there will be things that are specific to their community, just as, things that we need to pursue won't necessarily be applicable to Freeport, but I do want to reiterate there will be overlap and we will pursue collaborative efforts where possible.
Well, hopefully this is my last question.
It's okay if it's not.
Where does the role of the railroad come in between trying to connect communities and
So that's
increase public transportation?
That's a tough one because this plan, as far as my understanding goes, it's what Brunswick can control, and obviously, we could attempt to reach out and work with Amtrak, but as it currently stands, expanding that railroad is not necessarily something that we are anticipating will be included in the plan, just because it's not something that we have very much control over. But that's not to say that we can't push for it in the future if people feel very strongly about it. But again, that's just my understanding as it currently stands. That could change. Yeah.
So we made it pretty clear the trains are not in our control as of right now. The existing station that we use as a bus station, I mean, it's a pretty localized place. I'm sure it is for the most part now. But if there's going to be further push for public transportation, would that be like a hub? Because it's already pre-existing.
So an example that wasn't listed up there is expanding, like we said, public transit, which does include our local bus and bus routes. So I know that will for certain be something that we're looking at including in the plan, the specifics of which I don't yet know, but I strongly anticipate it will be included in the plan, and that is also something that we could then collaborate with other communities who, whether or not they're doing the climate action plan, I don't think any community is going to be opposed to improving their public transportation. But yes is the easiest answer. I'll take 2 more questions, if anyone's got them. Yes.
What kind of pushback are you getting, or is it just too soon?
Oh, it's never too soon. If you watch the town council presentation from December 4th, you will see what kind of pushback we are getting, but unfortunately a lot of what we've seen so far is mainly related to folks who just unfortunately don't necessarily believe that climate change is a problem. I will say though, there are people who do have justified reasons or suggestions concerning, some of the actions proposed, but they're also slightly misinformed. I've seen a lot of folks concerned about the fact that we'll be pursuing, for example, updating EV infrastructure and making that more publicly accessible, but folks see the expansion as, or at least the understanding I have from the comments I've received so far. I'm not going to generalize to everybody, but I've seen a lot of folks make comments expressing their concern that we're going to force them to buy an EV charging or an EV car, which is not the case at all. So it's just unfortunately a lot of misinformation that's being consumed, and it's all a learning opportunity, because what that tells me is that we just need to work a lot harder on the public education. And hopefully people listen. But one more question. I want to make sure Peggy has time to present too. Anyone? Wow. Go. Awesome. All righty.
I was going to say before you, go ahead. That screen is interesting for my presentation coming up, because everything that was on that screen that we're talking about with the Climate Action Task Force, I'm going to be talking about for you all as individuals.
That's not what it's supposed to do. One second. Go ahead.
So it interested me that I was just going down everyone and saying, yeah, I'm going to talk about that for individuals. I'm going to talk about that one. And so that we can see how each of us individually can have an impact.
Great. Yeah. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, Peggy Siegel of, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Perfect.
Sustainable
Practice. Yes. And I will let you go right ahead.
Thank you very much.
I am one half of a partnership that started Sustainable Practice just this year. The other half of the partnership is Fred Horch, whom you all may know. He had the green store downtown, F.W. Horch, for a number of years. Both of us are longtime Brunswick residents, and the fact that you all came out tonight tells me that you're sustainability champions. So I'm going to be talking to you about how Sustainable Practice can assist you, assist you with your sustainability goals. Let me tell you a little bit more about us. So we're an advising practice.
You want to hit the next button so they can see with the presentation?
I
know you're got it. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to talk a little bit more about what we do and what I'm going to be able to offer you in terms of free resources tonight. So we help the chief sustainability officers, you in your household, you in your business, you in an organization that you're a part of, to really make the best use of time and money to help your team become superbly sustainable. The reason that this slide is here is we frequently start by saying, is there some, because we want to make sure we cover any burning questions that you have or something that you really came to hear. So that's why it says, what do you really want to know? And I'm happy to have you just raise your hand and say, I'm here because I'm really curious about X or Y. Or we can wait for questions at the end. Yes?
Are you a for-profit?
Yes.
Non-profit?
Yes. Fred and I, this is a consulting business. Fred and I have made a commitment to the town of Brunswick because we both lived here for over 20 years, and we're committed to the town that we do everything for Brunswick at no cost. And the materials that I'm going to give you tonight are at no cost. So we give a lot of free resources anyway. But if people want the how-to, real consulting about their own sustainability, their home, and I'm going to talk about green homes as a way to introduce that concept, or a green business or a whole organization. Then you might hire particularly Fred Horch, he's been in sustainability for 30 years. He's been doing this. So he is the principal advisor. Yes?
I think we all have an idea in our heads what sustainability means, but can you tell us what it means to you?
Yes, that is an excellent question. It is to make sure that we live today to preserve the resources for the next generation or generations beyond us, so that we're preserving for the next generation. So that's a really good question, and a lot of people ask, they sort of wonder about that. I think it was defined by the UN, I can't remember what year it was now exactly, but that is something that also will come up in the materials. I'm glad you asked that question. So we provide well-researched, science-based sustainability guides and talks for free, and offer sustainability subscriptions, seminars, and evaluations for a fee. So yes, we are a consulting firm. We're working on a comprehensive sustainability handbook. Tonight you're going to get a guidebook, which is pretty comprehensive. That's going to be expanded even more into a book, which we're calling a sustainability handbook. We're also working on a web app so that you can measure your sustainability. This will be something that will be available through our website, and I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up as well. And that'll help sustainability leaders, champions like yourselves, in how to actually measure what you're doing. Are you all from Brunswick? Do you all live in town here? If you live here in town, I think that we're doing a fantastic job. Thank you to Ashley, thank you to the town. Really forward-thinking and forward-looking. The task force is doing a great job. And I went to the first, I don't know whether you all might have been at the workshop, the first workshop. I went to the first workshop. It was really great, and it was fun too. You really should go. It's great. It's fun. The other thing I want to say is that you may also know that this library, Curtis Library, is the only library outside of New York which has been designated as a sustainable library by the Sustainable Libraries Institute. I mean, we can really take a lot of pride in our town for what we're doing about climate action, what we're doing about sustainability, and our library. So we're very lucky. And we have some robust programs that I'm also going to talk about. Anything else you want to make sure that I cover? Otherwise, we'll go on. What is a greener home? This is somewhat amusing because, I mean, it's really green. It's like growing. But I'm going to talk about how to create a greener home because it really gets to what you can do as individuals. And the materials that I'm going to give you will be able to structure that for you so that you can see what else is it that I can do. My business partner, Fred Horch, writes a piece every week on Substack and Medium. And I have to say, I learn something every single week. It's free. You subscribe for free through our website, and every week there's something that's pretty remarkable that he has gotten from the resources that he explores during the week. He's currently in New Zealand. That's why he's not here tonight. He's hiking part of the time in New Zealand. We work every day, 16-hour time difference, that's a challenge, but we work every day, and he's doing some hiking in New Zealand. Otherwise, he would be here giving this presentation. He'll be back in May, and talking about greener homes. So, how to create a greener home, and what you might want is how to measure your success. We define these three aspects of green: the natural environment, social justice is a part of it, and I'm sure that you've heard this, and we're talking about that as a town, and the Climate Action Task Force is talking about that also, and personal health. And you saw, again, these items on Ashley's slides as well. A greener home is more environmentally sustainable. Here is environmental sustainability, a definition which you asked about. There it is right on the screen. For us to meet our needs in ways that allow posterity to meet their needs. That's really what it comes down to. And I believe that's taken directly from the United Nations definition.
I like
So-
the way you said it better.
Oh, oh, thank you. So, we have good intentions, and you all are here, so you're committed, and I know you're sustainability champions. We have good intentions to conserve resources and to leave that legacy. But we need to take effective actions, and how are we going to do that? Sustainable practice has structured it so that it's easy to see. It's pretty tricky to do, but it's easy to see how we can do that. We have named 20 best sustainable practices. They're here on a sheet for you to take home. Some of you may be surprised at some of them. I have even been surprised at some of them when my business partner comes up with them. So you can take home the top 20. But what we talk about in terms of structure are 7 pathways. And those pathways, the reason I mentioned Fred Horch hiking is because we structure it according to pathways and trails along the pathways to get to sustainability. And our entire guidebook, which is 24 pages, you can also get an expanded version for free, 45 pages, with different trails that you can take on the sustainability pathways. Here is a preview of the top 20 best practices. Again, I'm going to give you a sheet. It tells you exactly how you can do the composting. You know, it was interesting. Ashley started out by saying who, what, and why in that first slide. And I'm always talking about, we take a look at what we're looking at in terms of sustainability, what we're talking about, why we're doing it, and sustainable practice gives you how you can do it. So when I give you the top 20, you'll be able to see how you can get at these best practices. So, 7 pathways, and this is how we structure it. You saw this on Ashley's slide as well. Very, very similar. And in the major guide that we have printed out, you can take a print copy, or I can tell you how to get it digitally if you don't want to take the paper. But I assure you that the paper that it's printed on is 100% recyclable. Compostable if you compost paper, if you shred it and compost it. My business partner, Fred, has an entire yard of composted materials, including shredded paper. It's very interesting. So this is how we're going to structure the pathways. So what you, and I'm not going to give you all that because I'm going right now because I'm going to give it to you, in printed form, or you can see it digitally. So what you want to do for your own personal sustainability plan, or for your household, your business, or an organization, establish goals, choose those practices, measure the results, make adjustments based on those results, and then succeed. Ashley?
Is that Fred?
No.
Just had to ask.
That's very interesting that you say that. I've gotten some fantastic pictures. His wife is a Bowdoin professor, and she is on sabbatical. And so they are there together doing a lot of hiking in New Zealand, but this isn't.
Just had to ask.
No, right, no, this is not. So the resources that we're offering that will get you on those pathways and the trails. And it's very comprehensive. What I'm going to give you is very comprehensive. It's really pretty interesting just if you're living in a household to look at what you can do. So I will give you the guidebook, and then one step this week are these action guides that come out every Sunday morning at 8:30, free. You just sign up on our website and it will appear in your inbox. They are very comprehensive, and Fred also attaches all of the resources so you can see where we're getting this science-based information. And that is our website, which that's where you go for, and it's on all these materials as well.
Do you want to say it out loud for the viewers at home?
Yes. www.sustainablepractice.life. Any other questions? Yes?
Could you talk about how recyclable the plastic
Yes.
is that we put in our recycling bins?
Yes.
1 through 7s or whatever?
Yes, I can talk about that. I am just, I don't throw any plastic, I hadn't until we researched this. I hadn't thrown a piece of plastic away for I don't know how long. I mean, I was just so careful about recycling plastic. Fred has done a lot of research. It's all, in fact, if you sign up for this Substack, it comes into your inbox, but then you can see the archives as well. And he writes about this. And the frightening thing is nanoplastic. And what's happening is there is so little plastic that is recyclable when it's sorted that it's burned, so it's going into the air in nanoparticles, or it's getting in water in nanoparticles. Believe it or not, and there's quite a bit to back this up, it's better to landfill it. I know, it's shocking, but that's changed too. As you know, China stopped buying a lot of plastic that was supposed to be recycled, so that the plastic really didn't have anywhere to go. But once we start burning most of it, it's not a good situation. It's better to be in a landfill that is actually protected, so that it's, in fact, the United States does a pretty good job with landfilling in terms of lined landfills, so that it's actually safer to do that. You can dispute that. It's a good read to go research it. It is. I was really surprised, and believe me, it was hard for me to start putting that plastic in my trash. Yes.
How much of our trash does get burned? Some of it gets burned, doesn't it?
Yes.
Rather than go into landfills.
Yes.
So you're saying if we can't put the plastic in recyclable because it's not really recyclable?
It's, yeah, we call it wish cycling. You'll see that word in some of our publications. We wish that it were recyclable. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to get at why put it in our trash bag, because some of that gets burned anyway, doesn't it? Or does Brunswick's trash all go to, our garbage all go to landfill? My understanding is some of it gets burned. That's what I thought.
It goes to Maine, and they have smoke scrubbers. I've toured the facility. So they have smoke scrubbers. They cannot get everything. They do their best. I also know once it is burned, they tend to bury the ashes within landfills. So many of the particulates or leachates are contained within said landfills. I guess I'm going to turn to you on this one.
Actually, thank you for saying that. I have not toured the facility, so thank you.
Yeah, the biggest thing they say is everything is computerized. So
Is what I'm saying?
it's all computerized. So wash your plastics, make sure they're empty. Even a soda bottle that has a couple ounces of water in it will throw off the machine. That soda bottle that gets sorted incorrectly doesn't go through the right processes and potentially could be burned without any scrubbing going on.
You're talking about Eco-Maine now?
Yes.
But Eco-Maine is my recycling.
They also.
They also process all of our trash.
They're also taking all our trash. There's no way to
Jim, sounds like we have
landfill our
to
plastics,
pretty short
right?
of them.
In Brunswick, you mean, because we don't have a landfill? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we put our trash out, and then it's taken away to, is that what you mean? Yeah, right.
You were making the point that it's environmentally better.
Yes.
Landfill than burn.
Correct.
We don't have any choice here.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Well, you mean instead of putting it in the recycle bin, putting it in the trash will get burned anyway? Is that what you're saying?
That's what
Yeah.
the boiling up is coming to, but there are alternative actions and strategies that we're hopefully going to be exploring in the climate action plan that will lead us to pursue more sustainable waste avenues as far as how we take care of that. So if this, I mean, I certainly feel strongly about this, and it sounds like you all as well do as well. So I would say definitely show up and make that point. You know, we
Yes.
can't make change happen unless we all make enough of us think about it, and it's a trash fund for you.
Mhm.
So Peggy puts her recyclable plastics, the containers, in her trash
Because I'm not sure they're recyclable even.
and hopes that it gets in the landfill. I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you do with yours?
I religiously scrub out all of my recycling and I recycle it. I technically live just over the border in Topsom and I don't have community recycling immediately available to me, but I save all my recycling, I clean it as best as I possibly can, and I bring it places. I keep it in my truck until I can get it somewhere where I can recycle it. But, you know, I try and recycle it if possible, and I know obviously what parts of it can't be recycled, obviously.
That's what do you do with it? Clean all the plastics, put them in the recycle bin, watch them taken away, and just pray.
Yeah.
Said the same.
Just pray.
Well, and that's sort of what we call wish cycling. We're just not sure. But what we don't want is for the particulates to go into the air. And we don't, in fact, Bowdoin College did a study where they actually measured the particulates in the air, and it was surprising what these nanoparticles of plastic, so we don't want it to go in the air, and we don't want it to go in the water, and we're not really sure. So I think it's worth exploring. It's worth doing your reading. We have Fred wrote a whole piece about it. The one thing that you really can make a difference with, that this town has made so easy, is composting. And composting is really essential because food waste makes up 30% food waste, 30% of emissions in this country. I mean, that is just shocking. Ashley.
One distinction to clarify about wish cycling, I think there's two different forms. There's obviously the recycling that we have been told can be recycled and just hope that it's cleaned well enough that it does get recycled. But then also there's another aspect to wish cycling that this is clearly a group that's engaged and, you know, pays attention to the details concerning how to recycle, at least, you know, to the best of our ability to do so. But there's a lot of other people who also aren't aware of, you know, materials that just can't be recycled at all, and that further kind of fucks up the process. So
Exactly.
really the strategy is, yes, you know, recycling, organic recycling and composting is certainly, you know, actions and strategy, you know, pathways that we're going to pursue, but the other part is really kind of driving home that key educational piece as far as helping people to truly understand, making that education and education-related materials more accessible to help people make better and more informed choices, because really the best thing that we can try and encourage people to do is not buy plastic at all.
Exactly. And that's what
Easier said than done.
That's what, easier said than done, that's what we're pushing, is to try, and you'll see that on these materials. But when I give you these materials, I would look at the resources, and look at the resources. If you sign up for Substack and you can see all the resources, and who's saying, big problem with nanoparticles, maybe we shouldn't be trying to recycle plastic. It's a tough problem. It's a tough problem. Yes?
My understanding is the hospitals burn almost all of their, and hospitals generate so much waste. Is that correct, that that's burned, most of their plastics?
I don't know exactly what the hospital does.
Those aren't really, that's,
Yeah,
we have a large hospital in this town.
Right.
And it would be,
Right.
I would think, something to look into at
So,
some point.
A possible
There's probably a
action
few
to-
things you want to do first.
There's a lot of things I want to do. I just don't have the time or the capacity. But something like that would, because obviously, you know, the hospital, for obvious sanitary reasons, has to dispose of, you know, single-use materials. So in that instance, it's really tough to avoid, but maybe, you know, an alternative would be pursuing like alternative use materials, or materials that do the same job but are made of more sustainable materials. So
Yeah, I think they've had a committee, looking at this for some time.
Mhm.
It's still going to be a huge problem.
Yeah. I actually had surgery in June, and it was fascinating to me. I was just there for overnight, but when they brought me meals, it was really surprising how, wow, I was amazed. I had all the plastic. I did go to a board member and mention that I was interested in, working with the hospital if they were at all interested in taking some steps. But it's true. It's a balancing act when you.
So we do have a member on the Climate Action Task Force whose
Good.
area of expertise is related to the public health and resilience sector, and she
Good.
works for Maine-Med. So
Good. Yeah.
She is definitely someone that I would recommend reaching out to and talking to. Her name is Rebecca Lincoln. She will be at the workshop on the 7th, but otherwise, please feel free to show up at any of our committee meetings, moving forward in the process. I'm sure she'd be happy to talk more about that.
But you brought up such an interesting point, because it has to be disposed of.
Right.
And so that,
Right.
Yes?
So it's a good point. I think the hospital has to meet the requirements. of
Right.
Special ways that they have to deal with it. But aside from that, of course, they generate a lot of stuff. I try to recycle every speck of paper and everything else, but the reality is commercial, industrial, educational, municipal institutions in the town are generating 100 million, billion times what I am. I have no idea what local college is doing, or what LOB is doing, or what Path Iron Works and
Right.
is doing. They're generating a lot of stuff. Do we know what happens to all that stuff?
I know Bowdoin's doing a really good job. They're really on top of this with a whole sustainability department and so on. The surprising thing to me is the composting piece. If you go, and I don't mean here necessarily, in Brunswick, anywhere, the composting piece, which is a huge generator of greenhouse gases, food waste, is, when you go places, and Fred has sent photos from New Zealand where they have the colored bins, the yellow, blue, and brown, and this is where you place this. And the composting is one that you frequently see that recycling, and there's that third bin, the composting one that is frequently missing. And I think that it is frequently missing because it has to be disposed of, daily or every other day. And for big business or a hospital or something like that, it becomes a problem. But for us in Brunswick, they've made composting really easy, and in fact even added a place to do it. Yes?
There are two Brunswick counselors, Steve Weems and Jamie Eckert, as well as Stephen Woods and Chuka Zola in town, who have put together a really interesting 5-minute video on how to do organic recycling. And they demonstrate it for you in about 5 minutes.
We recycle every recyclable piece of food, but it makes me wonder about all the restaurants in town.
Oh, it's true. It's true. It's a, and there is, actually, you can tell us about this. I know that I heard about a suggestion that we even do recycling and composting downtown on the mall area and so on.
I haven't heard that specific suggestion per se, but expanding community-wide resources for increasing organic recycling and composting is something that without a doubt will be included in the plan. I don't even need to, think twice about that. That's definitely something that we're going to be pursuing that does apply to both residential and commercial homes and businesses that will hopefully be looking into ways that we can make it easier, provide clearer education, incentivize folks to do so. Again, those specifics we don't necessarily know yet, but that's part of the discussion that we're going to be holding at the workshop and continuing moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Great.
But I don't know exactly,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So Peggy, when you said they do a really good job of composting, you mean the town is doing it, or are you talking about the garbage to garden?
No, the town offers us bins for recycling on Industry Road and also at the rec center, composting. It's composting sites where you bring, I put mine in compostable bags, and then I take them to Industry Road and they'll take them, it's AgriCycle that does it, and they'll take them in packages, plastic packages. So if you pick up something in plastic, but you forget about it and it's in your refrigerator, or it goes bad or something, you can just throw the plastic container in there because AgriCycle has a way to break down the packaging. So it's really not onerous to compost here.
The challenge is, I don't think it's an issue getting folks who are very passionate about this to do so. I think that drive to go out of, not even that it's that far out of the way, but what's perceived as inconvenient in daily routine is it's more difficult for folks who aren't necessarily as passionate or don't know about these resources that exist. So it's getting that information out there, number one, but number two, also trying to implement new policies and strategies that make it easier for these people to engage in that process and participate.
Right,
Because
and
sometimes people don't want to travel there.
that's true. I always incorporate it with another errand, and it just feels so easy to do. The town also provides these, or they did, when I bought mine, a stainless steel composting thing that you just put on your kitchen counter. It was $5, and you fill that up every couple days, and then you just dump it. And you know you're putting it in the right place because Brunswick has made it very obvious. There's a whole list of what is compostable, what is not compostable. I give the town a lot of credit.
But if you have ways or thoughts and ideas on how to improve it, please show up to the workshop and let us know.
Obviously, we could, the recycle truck came to my house this morning, right? Every Wednesday morning, picked up all the bins, the trash and the recyclables. If we also included a way to have them pick up compostable food materials, there are private companies, I guess, that do that.
Right, Garbage to Garden does that, but you have to pay for it, yeah.
So it could be a strategy for
Yep.
the town to expand municipal collection of compostable materials.
Right,
I don't know what that would require.
right. I don't know. You know what I'd like to do right now? We still have a few minutes. I'd like to give you these guides. You just flip through them and say, hey, I was wondering about that. And you might have some questions.
Yeah, we just need to make sure we're done by 7:30.
Right. So just flip through these and see if
Yeah, you're welcome.
they, okay, yeah, that's
Was
fine.
that your question?
Oh,
Did you ask the planning?
sorry,
Pardon?
I heard you say compostable.
Oh, we're 7:13, sorry. All right, does anyone have any more questions for Peggy?
I'm also going to pass out the Top 20 sustainable practices. Okay, guess which one is number 1 on the list?
Composting.
You got it. And then it goes through 20 others that it tells you what you can do to really be on that path, on those pathways in your own home, business, or organization. And if you really need more information or more about how to do it, sustainable practice is there, and we can do that for you. Yeah.
Is that, I think we're all set then?
I think so. I also have some, bookmarks. And our website is on all these materials. If you just go there, free resources, free, if you'll just pass those out. Free resources, and if you sign up for the Substack, every Sunday morning you'll get one step this week, and it'll give you more information. Thank you all so much.
Great, yeah, thank you all again for coming. I do just want to say one thing really quick, is that Curtis Memorial Library is great. We're working on getting this series to be reoccurring each month, so check back in next month. It'll be the third Wednesday of each month, every time from 6 to 7:30 p.m. The library should have a description on its website, and I believe the topic of our next lecture will focus on coasts at risk and how to be more sustainable as far as, implementing more nature-based solutions concerning, protecting the coastline, coastal property, et cetera. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll pass these.